welcome to Going to IEU podcast. I'm your today's host, Ida Nydelius. I'm here with Johanna Jakovi, who's also the student government president. Hello, Johanna.
Hi, Ida.
How are you doing today?
Very good. How are you?
I'm also really good. It's an early morning here in Madrid, and I feel like spring is coming out.
It is. I'm really excited for the sun to be making its return.
I agree. So let's begin with, where is your home?
So my home is the classic IE example in the sense that it's not the place that I have a passport from. I consider Switzerland to be my home, but I'm originally from Germany. My parents are German. I have a German passport. Never lived there, and Switzerland has kind of taken place as being the place that I always go back to.
And Switzerland is the only place you lived at?
Not at all, actually. I spent most of my life in China. I lived there twice. I was there for 10 years. I was also in Switzerland twice, so that has now added up to about 5 years of actually physically being there. And I also lived in Turkey, in Istanbul, for another 3 years.
A typical all over the place IE profile.
Exactly, a classic in that sense. I really loved it, yeah.
So what are you studying at IE then?
So I am a third-year BBA BIR student. I am one of those that started in Segovia, the minority in our degree now. We were about 25 people. Now we're about 100, bringing in all the Madrid students. I love it. It's really great.
And BIR kind of fits with your profile too, having a lot of different contexts, culture.
Exactly. The way that I always put it is that BBA is for the head and then BIR is for the soul. You know, for me, I look at them in very different ways, and I would not have been satisfied just studying one degree without the other. It doesn't form a full picture for me, and there are so many different things that interest me. So I find the combination the perfect solution for that.
What interests you?
Oh, that's a big question. There are so many things that interest me. The things that I know more specifically are what doesn't interest me. I think the middle point between business and between international relations is the ideal point for me.
Could you describe this point? Where are you at? Like, what kind of profession is the middle point?
So a lot of people ask me if I'd want to go into politics when I decided to run for student government.
Do you want to go into politics?
I don't want to go into politics. But at the same time, I also don't want to go into something like finance, accounting, or hard business, you know, that stereotype for that. For me, something in the middle is perfect. I'm a person who is a people person, you know. I like to work with people. I like to work on problems in a way, policy things. But I also don't necessarily love the idea of running for office, being in the public eye, and all of those things that come with being a person in office in the sense of barriers and mechanisms that are put in place, obviously, to protect the institutions that hold these power mechanisms, let's put it that way. But something in the middle is the ideal point. I have not exactly found what it is yet. I'm experimenting a lot right now in terms of my internships, exchange, things like that. The student government itself is a little bit of an experiment in figuring out what it is that I would like to do a couple of years down the line. But right now, this is the perfect in between.
Nice. So what kind of internship and exchange have you done or are doing?
So I'm actually wrapping up an internship right now this week. It's with the university, ironically. I'm doing a lot with the university right now. And it's on the master's side of the business school. I work in a team called Strategic Engagement and Communications. So they take care of things like rankings, relationships with alumni, and particularly my responsibility is speaking to young alumni, so people who have graduated in the last 5 years, and helping them out by asking them what they're up to. How are you? Tell me what you've been up to. And then based on their responses, sharing the resources that the university has available. So that internship is a reminder for me that there are so many things that the university has on offer, and there are so many things that are available, just many people don't know about them or they don't know how to use them. So that internship is literally about me helping them to close that gap. And it's been super fun. I get to speak to so many people from so many different places around the world. And they all offer free life advice to me. So it's perfect, you know. They've told me a lot about the things that they're studying now that they did their own MBAs or Masters in Management, things like that. So it's been super enriching. I did that for 6 months. One of the big pluses of doing an internship from within the institution, let's put it that way, is that you can do it on the side of being a student. They know that you have class. And so it's not like I can work, so let's say 1 to 6 every single day for a part-time internship. It's more flexible in that sense. I can make my own hours. I just have to fulfill my responsibilities, which is super ideal given the irregular structure of a schedule of a dual degree student, and I'm sure also of a single degree student.
For sure. I'm doing internship here too with the marketing, which is completely different from my degree, but it still connects it, you know? It's exploring the different opportunities here, because there are a lot, like you say. It's just how do you find them? And with the internship, I think there's different ways of getting an internship within the institution. How was your way of doing that?
So I went to the career portal because I was looking for something at the beginning of the first semester of this year to do on the side. I wanted to, let's say, broaden my horizons, you know, this general expression. And I was just exploring a little bit, seeing what was available, and the job listing on the career portal from the university said they wanted a full-time student, and they had a couple of other specifications that didn't necessarily match my portfolio at first glance. But they were open to an interview, and from that point onwards, it really was a great conversation, and they explained a little bit more about the job. I explained a little bit more about my background, and we realized it was a good fit. So the career portal in that situation was super helpful for me, especially for finding internships that were from within the institution.
That's a good recommendation then.
Yeah, this career portal, it's unfortunately not as visible as I know the Talent and Careers Office would like it to be. There are many job postings and listings on there, also from people who have graduated from the university and would like to hire some IE students for a job or an internship, that sort of situation. But again, it's one of those resources that not a lot of people know about or know how to use. So it's a work in progress.
And be curious and not just deny it because it doesn't fit your profile, right?
Exactly. This was a piece of advice that my dad gave me because I went to him and I was like, there are a lot of things out there that seem super interesting to me or would be really ideal to do on the side of being a full-time student, but I'm not sure if this is what they're looking for. And I mean, he just said, how can it hurt you? Yeah,
exactly.
It's really not going to take much away from you. You know, you can only go upwards from there in the sense that it takes a couple of minutes to update your CV, post it, that sort of a thing. And then from there on out, maybe you get something, maybe you don't. You haven't lost anything in that case. So this was a situation where just trying it out actually led to exactly what I was looking for.
And you don't know always what you're looking for or which profile you actually have until you try it out.
Exactly. That is a very deep and wise statement. On the surface level, it doesn't sound like it, but it is. You don't always know what you're looking for. I had no idea what I was getting myself into when I sent off that application, and it really wasn't what I expected, but I had a lot of fun. It was a great opportunity for me.
So was it similar with the process of student government? How did you get into working with student government in the first place?
This was also one of those situations where I was like, you know what, I'm going to give it a shot. Even if I don't necessarily know if this could really fit my background or my portfolio, that sort of a thing. The student government team from last year, there were a couple of members on there that were my friends. And so I was supporting them throughout the election process. I voted for them, of course, and I really liked many of the things that they were putting out there in terms of their proposals, their suggestions, things that they would like to work on or see emulated in the university. And so based on that, I made a pick for which committee would be most interesting to me.
And that was?
And that was community development. I was working under Borja. He was a member of the team from the Hive. That's the team name for the previous student government. And we started off from there. I told him, you know, if this looks like something that would be useful to you in terms of me, let me know. I'd be super happy to give this a shot and see where this could take us. And we gave it a shot. It was a big learning experience, a huge learning curve, let's put it that way. It really was a learning curve, and especially given the move to the tower and given the circumstances of the pandemic, I think very unprecedented in how community development worked. But that was exactly it. I gave it a shot, it worked out, and now a couple of months later, here we are, president of the student government.
Because you guys got elected, or let's say the previous government got elected in April, as you as well got elected this April, and then you're in term for 1 year, correct?
Exactly.
So what you mentioned with the move to the tower, you were first in place in Segovia last year.
Yeah.
And then with the whole movement to the tower, which is also completely new.
Completely.
And being as an officer, what kind of work did you aim to put in place to make this tower as a home for students?
So one of the things that I want to say is that when you're a member of the student government, not necessarily a member of the team that was elected, then you're actually not classified as an officer. So you work in a committee, and then that makes you a committee member or a committee director, that sort of a thing. And that's always super important to differentiate just as a matter of responsibility. I've learned this recently now, being an officer, compared to last year where I wasn't.
And to put it under like a tree, you have the president and you have an officer for each committee.
Exactly.
That would be Borja in the community last year. And then you have community members.
Exactly.
How many of those do you have in each committee?
So it depends on the committee. We're actually in the process of forming our committees right now. And depending on the proposals that we have in place and the work that we have going on already, it varies. So for example, community development has a committee per campus. So I was working as the community development director for the committee in Madrid. And we had the director and then 3 other people working in the committee. So that kind of ended up having 5 people responsible for community development in Madrid. And for example, academics usually is a little bit of a lesser number for committee members, but you still have someone on each campus. Now we have kept that kind of what they did last year in terms of having 2 people, 2 committees per campus for community development and academics. And athletics is one thing that we've taken from the last student government. They implemented this idea of having a committee specifically for athletics. We're running with that idea. We've got a great committee coming out. I know that Isabella Ochoa, our athletics officer, she has been working very hard on that. And we've got people representing both campuses for the committee. That is super important to be able to reflect that there is a connection between these campuses and none should be underrepresented. And yeah.
So there are the president committee, and then there's 2 community committees per campus, and then 2 academics per campus, and then 1 sports athletics committee.
Exactly. There's an athletics committee, and then we also have a communications committee. The communications committee seems to ironically get a little less visibility. Kind of counterintuitive, no? But the communications committee is exactly what is going to build that relationship between student government and student body. It's kind of just taken as a given, but it's so important, and we're really working to highlight it, to cement that relationship this year.
So what are the channels between the student government and the student body?
So the existing ones right now are basically Instagram and then WhatsApp group chats with class representatives. We want to broaden these channels to include more things. One of the things that we're working on right now with the administration is to see if we could get a page on Blackboard that the student government can use and only the student government can post on, to keep students updated on what's happening in the university. Class representatives get a lot of messages to pass on to the classes, and sometimes in excessive amounts. And it's unrealistic to expect them to send every single message every single time. And unfortunately, they just kind of die out. You know, when you feel like you're getting spammed, you lose interest in that sort of a responsibility. So we want to alleviate that sort of a pressure that sometimes doesn't make a lot of sense for class representatives and change it to something that we can do probably a little bit better, given our unique position of access to information directly with the administration and seeing what's going on, and sharing that directly to our audience, which is every single individual student. So that is one of the things that we'd like to add. Another thing that we'd like to add is a WhatsApp group chat, but not with class representatives. And the idea,
anyone who want to, or
exactly. So you join it using a link. We're in the process of testing this to make sure that this actually makes sense. The idea would be only the administrators of the WhatsApp group chat can send messages. We don't want another one of the spam group chats. I know you know exactly what I'm talking about, where
for sure.
Everyone sends in the forms that they have to fill out for some sort of a class project, or there's a party happening. Of course, it makes sense. But we want to make sure that the important messages from the university are given some priority and are getting through, especially to the people who are looking for the information. Because I don't need to shove information down anyone's throat who doesn't want it. I have no desire to do that. It's a waste of my time. It's a waste of other people's time.
And I agree with that too. Like going through the class rep, it's very difficult to send a message, right time, at the right context, and not always that is the right time, you know? Like people are looking for the information, don't want to scroll through a WhatsApp group chat. They actually want to go to a channel that is only this information.
Exactly. That's the idea, where we also want to limit the frequency with which the information is being put out. So the goal right now is to have a message sent every Monday at an approximate time, you know, something like midday, and just send out one message with all the things that are happening in that week, and that's about it. If there's anything really urgent from the administration, knock on wood that doesn't happen, then we would, of course, use those channels. But that is just one of those extra things that we think we can put in place, where the people who want to receive the information will end up having easier access to it in a manner that is digestible, not overwhelming, and you can always refer back to it. That is one of the things that we've learned with the Instagram. For something like Instagram stories, I mean, it disappears after 24 hours by definition. And it's a little less formal, that sort of a thing. So this is what we're working on. We're looking for more channels that are more efficient and with a little bit more of a direction. If anyone has any recommendations, we're all ears.
Shoot Johanna a text.
Exactly. I'm all ears.
So what's behind this information? What are you working on?
In terms of our proposals in general for communications, or for the entire team?
Like, what would you send out to the student body?
Well, we would actually not use the channel just for our own initiatives. In fact, the majority of the information being put out through those channels would actually have nothing to do really with the student government, other than us giving the visibility to other aspects of student life, student experience, student initiatives.
For
example, I know that the music club is doing an event this weekend. I believe it's called a drive-by. I'm not entirely sure. They would like some people to join them in on that. I think they've been working very hard at it, and many other people would surely enjoy it if they knew about it or if they decided to sign up. So one of the things that a university does is it gives you room to work on things that are not just academic. It gives you room to work on your people skills, organizational skills, and not in the sense of, I need to not procrastinate and work on this assignment, but in the sense of, let me work on a project that really interests me. And from there, sometimes you don't have the promotional channels that you would like to have, but you know that there are people out there who would really be interested in participating in these sorts of things. And so we want to use our channels to promote these things. I think the student government has a responsibility to cater to everyone. And that means if we can highlight things that our peers would benefit from in terms of having a more broad or fulfilled sense of a student life, then why shouldn't we use those channels to promote these sorts of events, initiatives?
It sounds like you are the communication channel between student and student, student and management, management and student. But what is, even one more layer down, what is the work you do besides being the communication channel?
So we got voted in about 3-4 weeks ago now. And in those 3-4 weeks, we've been speaking a lot amongst ourselves to figure out exactly how to move forwards, because we had a huge number of proposals prepared for the campaign, many of which we really would like to see implemented and really can stand by and defend without a problem.
Would you like to give us an example?
I know one that is very popular would be working on the attendance policy, not in the sense of changing physical, the 30% attendance allowance, that sort of thing, but to build onto it by including an additional 10 or 20% that allows you to take the class online, even if the class is scheduled as in person. The reason that we would like to push this forwards is because a number of reasons. One, sometimes you get really sick and it's just not appropriate for you to go to university in person. Now that the COVID policy has changed in the country, it seems to be a little bit of a gray area that no one quite knows how to answer. So when you're ill and you're in a class of 50 people and someone is doing a presentation or a professor is lecturing, you really can't focus well if someone is coughing and really unwell next to you, you know? It's not about being a germaphobe. It's, I see my peers physically unwell.
And maybe having some fear still from COVID.
For sure.
Yeah.
I don't think that people are going to be recovering from that sort of sentiment very quickly. I think it'll take a while. So that's one of the reasons. Another one of the reasons is we're young. We travel a lot. It happens, that sort of a thing. But many professors, even if you're traveling, they would just like you to be there in class. And if you can in any way participate or stay involved in one way or the other, they'd welcome it.
And I think it would be amazing to still be able to attend, even though if you cannot be there in person.
Exactly.
Like if you need to go home for like a personal reason, or you're sick at home but still want to take care of, like, to be a part of it. You have the opportunity, or at least should have.
Entirely that, because excused absences are notoriously infamous for basically never being given out. I mean, I have some ridiculous examples from my friends who really should have been given an excused absence that had nothing to do with irresponsibility or laziness, or I don't know what other excuses exist, where it's just, I kind of need a day to myself where I can't go to the tower, and that's not given.
Yeah.
The point is not to max out your absences so that you need an excused absence, but sometimes
you need a day to relax and calm down your stress levels. Exactly. Some days it gets hard.
Just like that expression, things happen. I don't want to say the explicit version of it, but that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And given that we know that online learning, let's put it that way, works, there's no reason that we shouldn't use it. I'm sure that the university invested a lot of time and money into ensuring that a hybrid format is feasible and manageable and works. And I don't know how much technology is involved in that, let alone ensuring all the professors know how Zoom works and breakout rooms work, that sort of a thing. It takes time, it takes money, and now that is a new set of information and knowledge that the university has been able to grasp. Why not build on it? That sort of a thing.
It sounds like this proposal is kind of concising what the student body is thinking and feeling. Like, for example, the absences have been facing a lot of problems and irritation, frustration from students. And your job is to kind of put it into rationales and present it for the management.
Exactly. I think what I'm learning is that a lot of the job is learning how to say maybe not, in the sense where many ideas really seem to make a lot of sense at surface level. You know, it's a quick fix solution, but the idea is not that we have a quick fix solution. The goal with this team, at least the goal that our team has formulated, is that we want to now fill in the gaps of all the building blocks that have been put in place. You know, my dad always uses this analogy of a bucket, and first you put in the big things. I believe this actually comes from a Corona advertisement.
It is from, I know what you mean, like how to fit in as much as possible within a bucket. You begin with the big ones because the smaller ones will trickle down. Exactly.
They'll fill in the gaps. And so the university, at least for bachelor students, is still quite young. There are many gaps that we can fill. All of the big things have basically been put in place now. The tower being a very, very, very big thing.
A big block in there.
Exactly. So we're now in a situation where many of the foundations are in place. You've got the kind of school culture in the sense of, you know, we don't focus that much on reading, memorizing. We're a very practical-based university. It's very much so how you are able to interact with people and build on those interactions, that sort of a thing. And now we have a couple of things that we'd like to fill in. So these are things like refining the attendance policy, reworking scheduling mechanisms. So historically, languages have always been 2 days a week from 6 to 9 p.m., one of 2 sessions, and it alternates on the other day. I believe that is going to be changing, if I'm not mistaken. The administration has been working on that because the feedback was the schedules don't make sense. Mm-hmm. Kind of what I was saying before about me having an internship with the university, because no other company in their right mind would take me knowing that I have class at 9 and then again at 1
mm-hmm.
and then again at 6.
So like a regular schedule.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Exactly. So the goal is essentially to take those things, figure out how we can put in a new solution that just refines it, that builds on it, but doesn't do a complete 180. Mm-hmm. We are looking for stability that works in the long term. And I know that we're only in power, let's say in power in parentheses, for a year. But we're working to put a few things in place that can work in the long term and can create a higher level of standard within the university. I think many times we forget how young the university is. It's not something that we necessarily should think about either. But yeah.
There's a lot of things to work on.
Mm-hmm.
If you compare it to like a much old institution, like the Swedish university, which is from the 16th century.
Completely.
You can imagine like the complete different in tradition and structure, because they've been evaluating much longer.
Yeah.
And that's the process you're doing now.
Exactly. It's the idea of a learning curve, right? Mm-hmm. It takes time, and time really is of the essence in that sense, that there's no need to rush things. There's no need to trip over things because you really want to make things work now. But you can use what you have in front of you and try and turn it into something a little bit better. My goal here as president with the student government is to see if I can make everything better by literally a fraction. Because I know how hard that is, having worked with the student government last year. And I mean, lots of respect to Abdul. This guy was incredible. I don't know how he did it all. He's a machine.
For people who don't know, it was the previous president of student government.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. Exactly. That's a good point to make. My bad. And I don't want to say that there's a lot of red tape, but there's a lot of tape in the sense of there are many things in place that you can't just smash out of the way. It doesn't work like that. You have to find a way to jump over it, jump around it, that sort of a thing. But you have to collaborate with the university and with the local regulations as well. Many of them being hard to circumnavigate. Is circumnavigate a word? I believe it is. Being hard to circumnavigate, given that we are a very international, very diverse university, and we work in a very different way. We have, I believe it's an ECT system for credits. We graduate in 4 years. I think many Spanish universities have a bachelor that finishes in 3 instead of 4.
There's a lot of regulation and the context that plays a role.
Exactly. And recently I've learned that dual degrees are not really easy to justify in a way that is accredited in the Spanish system. So in order for the university to be legit, you have to comply with things. It's always like that. And it's the same thing for the student government. In order for us to make some changes, we have to comply with the university's regulations. And sometimes you can move those regulations a little bit left and right, you can bend them a little bit, but it still has to remain acceptable. Let's put it that way.
Within the legal frame.
Exactly. You have to know where the bounds of your responsibilities are. And that's one of the things that I learned a lot from Abdul about, where it's super exciting to have a new idea. People are always, you form a relationship when you have something to complain about together. I mean, this is really a class A tip for someone when you're in a new situation, you don't know anyone. A great way to become good friends with someone, or not good friends, exactly, is to find something that you both don't like. I have a friend that always says there's nothing that brings you closer than mutual suffering. And it's always a little bit of a dramatic statement, but it is. And so it's always easy to fall back on saying, this is such a problem. It's really, I hate it. It's horrible, that sort of a thing. And then you try and go about implementing a solution. You ask someone, can you give me a solution? I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And then sometimes you get some really great ideas. And sometimes you get some ideas that are really out there. And these ideas are super important because they push you forwards. But you can't always say yes to everything as much as it would be nice to. And
the yes, maybe.
Mm-hmm, exactly, the yes, maybe. The point is not to say no. It's more to consider it and see how it can be implemented without necessarily bending things beyond the realm of relevance, acceptability, all of these things, appropriateness.
So coming back to the fact it's a young institution, and we've been talking about there's a lot of things to improve on it. But are there also benefits, do you think, of being the president in such a young institution and having the responsibility to improve it?
I think yes. It just means that there are far fewer things that are done just because the way it's been done. You find yourself frequently in a situation where they say, well, why would we do it in a different way? And it's like, why not? Well, it's never been done in a different way. We've always done it like this, so why would we change it? And I find that always to be a poor reasoning for why you shouldn't progress with something. So given the youthful stage of the institution, I believe this is something like the 8th student government to ever exist at the university. We are in a position to not only mold the university as an entity or as an institution, but also to mold the responsibility of the student government. We've been here for about a month. We've had a couple of meetings with different people within the administration. And I'm still figuring out exactly how we can mold this to be in the best shape possible for the next student government to take over. But it means that there are a lot more things that you can move around a little bit, experiment with, see exactly what direction you can go into. And have fewer questions like, well, why would we do that? It's always been done like that.
Questioning the ways a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the characteristics would be the questioning, but also being curious and diplomatic, maybe, like not say completely no or yes, but maybe let's look at it. Exactly.
I try to not say no too fast and too much. That was always something that drove my mother insane when I was a kid, that, I think every kid goes through a stage where they just say no to everything, even when they mean yes. Yeah. I definitely had that stage for a little bit longer than my mom would have hoped.
You seem stubborn, huh?
Yeah. That is definitely a trait that is there, but we're working on it.
So what other characteristic would a person who works in student government have? Or maybe fit into, maybe not even fit into, because you never know which role you fit into, right? The way we discussed before. But what characteristic maybe do you develop when you work in the student government?
I think the first question you asked me, I could probably answer more appropriately, simply because I think my answer to what characteristics I will develop over the next year will very much so change.
We come back next year.
Exactly. I'll be back in a couple of months. But I think that will very much so change every single month over the next year whenever you ask me. But one of the characteristics that I think is super important to have in any student government member, not necessarily a president, is a willingness to listen. It sounds so basic and it sounds so stereotypical, but I mean, our team has 8 people. The university has hundreds of people, a couple thousand actually. And I mean, it's a university. People know how to use their brain. People are smart. They're diverse. They have so many different ways of looking at things and approaching things and potential solutions. The greatest asset of the university really is the student body. So not everyone is in a position that is capable or even would like to work with the student government or ever find themselves in a situation of that sort of a responsibility for the university. But that doesn't mean that they don't have great ideas or great concerns. Our student government team is composed of various different degrees, friendships, age levels, nationalities, that sort of a thing. The diversity is there. However, that doesn't mean that we can speak for every single person in the university. The goal is that you represent the student body, but also that you answer to their needs, and you can't do that if you're not paying attention. Mm-hmm. So being receptive is super important, but also patience in the sense of you've got to have the willingness to see things through, even if you get told no many times. Mm-hmm. Because even if I'm trying not to say no, people will say no to me. That's okay, that's normal. So my goal is to always take a step back then, see, okay, why is it that they're saying no? How can we frame this in a way that is more relevant or more logical? How can we rework this in a way that is more appropriate? That sort of thing. And then take a step forwards again and say, how about this? And many times they will say no, multiple times, until they eventually might say yes. Sometimes they will never say yes. But these things take time. They take working, and they take collaborating, and they take reconsidering. And so patience is important. The ability to not lose it.
And also be resilient.
Exactly. Yes, that is the word that I'm looking for. Exactly. Resilience is super important.
Yeah.
My thesaurus, my internal thesaurus is not collaborating today.
It's okay. So what would you recommend for a student who wants to join the student government? What would they do?
The first thing would probably be reaching out to the student government. We actually had applications open for the last week and a half now.
So you can still apply?
Unfortunately, the applications are closed now. But if at any point throughout the year you would like to get involved, I recommend reaching out to any one of us. If you have a particular will, then it doesn't really matter what your skill sets are. I am a firm believer that being interested goes a lot further than having a particular skill, because you could be super, super skilled but have absolutely no interest, and that doesn't get anyone anywhere. So reach out to us. Let us know what your ideas are. If you do find yourself wanting to join the student government at some point in the year, it's probably because you do have some ideas or you do have some concerns you want to address. So you can reach out to any one of us as a member, if you know us personally or have any mutual friends, or find our contact information, or just reach out directly through our student government Instagram. Your class representatives should also have a contact information for someone in the student government team, given that WhatsApp group chat with the class reps.
And why would you recommend them to do that? Why take the step?
I wouldn't actually recommend it to everyone, because if you're not interested, you're not interested. And that's okay. I mean, it's normal that people are interested in different things.
What if someone who's listening right now have an interest, but unsure whether to take the step or not? What would be your main catchphrase to convince them?
Give it a shot.
Give it a shot.
Exactly what we were talking about before with the internship, Why not give it a shot? You never know what could happen. And if they say no, then so what? I doubt it that we are going to end up saying no. But give it a shot. Come to us. We want to hear your voices. We want to hear what you have to say. It's a big university. We have many changes that we want to make. There's lots of progress to be made. And for that, we could use any support. So let us know.
And you who are listening, take the step.
Exactly.
Yeah. So moving on to the future, how would you like the student government to evolve?
I would like for the student government to have a much closer relationship with the student body, but also for the student government to have a much closer relationship with the administration. We do kind of serve as that middle point between administration and student body. And without that middle point, it's not feasible. It becomes a mess. It's like a bridge. You can't just kind of run through the river every time. That was a very poor analogy, but that doesn't matter.
I hope you got the idea in your head.
I do have the idea in my head. I don't know if anyone else is seeing the same idea, but the idea would be to facilitate those closer relationships, because when we have a close relationship with the student body and we have a close relationship with the administration, it ends up being the case that the student body has a close relationship with the administration. and vice versa. So that's why we've put such emphasis on our communications committee. It is quite a sizable committee. We actually have 2 communications officers in place. And working on these things will end up being hopefully what defines a new way of handling a student government term, let's put it that way. We'd like to put these mechanisms in place that it's normal for the student government to be widely recognized by the student body, because when that happens, then you get a lot more feedback and a lot more engagement and a lot more interaction. And so working on that will take a while. It'll take a lot of trial and error. That's why we're doing some research based on figuring out if this Blackboard page could work, or if this WhatsApp group chat that I was talking about before would be effective. And that's the big thing, I think.
Cool. So coming back to you now, with all of these projects you're juggling up in the air, how do you manage them? Like, would you have any specific time management tips on how to do this?
You're asking me this at a very funny timing, actually, because the last 2-3 days I have been so demotivated. You know, it's the last 2 days of the semester. I have my last exam tomorrow.
Yeah. Me
I'm
too.
finishing my internship. Good luck to you too. I'm finishing my internship next week, and it's been a long year in the sense that I've been working on so many projects, and I've really been having a great time with them. But now the end is so far yet so near, and it's just like the end of the fuse. So I'm reworking on driving up that motivation today, actually. But the most important thing for me is being well-rounded. That also sounds extremely stereotypical and basic as a response, but I can't do the things that I want to do professionally if I don't do the things that are important to me socially and personally. It just doesn't work. You know, I think at the same time, I'm also not going to be happy personally and socially if I'm not doing anything that interests me professionally. So in order for me to be able to fulfill all of these responsibilities in terms of being a student, having the internship and the student government, I do things for myself. It sounds so basic, but it's really hard to do in the sense of actually carving time out in your schedule where you say, I'm going to see my friends and I'm going to just do stupid things, you know, like I don't know what you guys do with your friends. Sometimes we go on walks, sometimes we go for a drink, sometimes we go out, and I just end up dancing for 3 hours and I lose my friends. But like, it's things that I do that are for the soul, kind of balancing out again what I was saying between BBA BIR, something for the head, something for the soul. You need to have both. So my greatest recommendation is actually carving time out. Because if you don't tell yourself, I'm going to do this during this time, it sounds mechanic, but otherwise it's hard to do it. It's hard to allocate that time. And when I first started the internship, this was a really helpful point from my boss, who said, well, if you need to go to the gym, go do it. Like, I don't mind. I'm going to be in the office at this time, but if you want to go to the gym and this is the only time that makes sense for you, take it. Do it. And I did. And it's become really super important to me that I have that sort of a routine where if I do decide to go to the gym for an hour or two on a Thursday, then I'll wake up an hour early, do some work, go to the gym, and then spend another hour after class working on my internship, that sort of a thing. But balance is key. And the motivation part is really important. If you're not motivated, if you're not interested, it's hard to do.
For sure. Don't overwhelm yourself with the work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's cheesy, but you gotta like what you're doing. Then you'll never work a day in your life.
For sure. Being highly involved in an institution with things that interest you, even though you didn't know this was what you're looking for, really opening up your horizon, but also you learn a lot, right? Completely.
I mean, I wouldn't be doing these things if I really didn't find them interesting. At least not so many things if I didn't find them interesting. So taking the time to do a little bit more research to see that this is actually something that interests you and is feasible in the plans that you have for yourself, even if they're subconscious, really goes a long way. It's a little bit of an investment that just pushes you so much more towards your aspirations.
For sure. So wrapping this up a bit, you have been mentioning a lot of quotes throughout this episode. Would you like to give us one of your favorites? What would motivate you? Maybe you can remind yourself that.
So I've also mentioned my parents a few times now.
Shout
maybe
out
you can
to them.
tell. Yeah, shout out. Maybe you can tell I'm quite tired today for that last exam tomorrow. Hence the many cheesy expressions and the references to my parents. But one of the things that my dad always said that drove me absolutely insane was every morning when my sister and I would leave the house, he'd say, "Don't forget to make mistakes." And this was when I was still going to school, like at home before university. I mean, this started, I don't know, since the day I can remember until the very day that my younger sister graduated university. He said it every single day. Don't forget to make mistakes. You don't understand how much that irritated my sister and I, but that set a huge precedent for us to learn and for us to take joy in learning, because the relationship with learning can sometimes be a little bit tense because you don't want to fail. The big F word, failure. Everyone's terrified of it, and it seems so daunting and it seems so horrible.
But shift that up to
Exactly.
make those mistakes.
Exactly. Give it a shot. It's exactly that thing we were talking about before, about just trying, giving it a shot. So take that step forwards. It doesn't have to be a leap. It doesn't have to be a large. It can just be a step. But take that step. See where it takes you. And if it takes you 2 steps backwards, that's okay. Then you step to the side and you step forwards again. It's all right. Just give it a shot. Don't forget to make mistakes.
That was a nice wrapping up with your quote, Johanna, and super lovely having you here at the podcast today. And I hope the listeners have been learning a lot about the student government, the work you do, and be encouraged to take that step.
Thank you very much, Ida. This has been super fun. Sorry for my rambling, but the message stays. Take a step forwards. Don't forget to make mistakes. And please, at any point in time, reach out to us.